Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're beaming out to you and the entire planet from the beautiful book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest little neighborhood in all of Boston. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Audible, CastBox, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Today we're celebrating the cozy and creepy sides of Kidlit. First up, the cozy. Alyssa Satin Capucilli is here to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Biscuit series. And later in the show, Melanie Dale will be here to celebrate her middle grade novel, Girl of Lore. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog, Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place. Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by the Fred the Snake series, written by Dr. Peter Cotton. I just got back from the COSPA National Education Conference. 1,500 school leaders from across the country. And I have to tell you, one of the biggest smiles at our booth came from a little snake named Fred. We were sharing the Fred the Snake book series, and again, superintendents and educators were drawn in by the bright, colorful illustration. They'd pick up a book, start flipping through it, and you could just see it. They got it. These are the kinds of stories kids want to read. But you know what really stopped them in their tracks? When I told them that the author, Dr. Peter Cotton, was a world-renowned gastroenterologist and teacher before he began writing children's books. And suddenly it clicked. Here's someone who spent a lifetime helping people, now using the same care, the same curiosity to create stories that help kids feel brave, welcome, and excited to learn. The Fred the Snake series now includes 10 wonderful adventures, from getting mended to going to school to exploring cities and beaches with friends, and every one of them is filled with heart, humor, and connection. We loved having Dr. Peter on Reading with Your Kids, and I can tell you, educators at the COSPA conference love Fred the Snake just as much as we do. So if you're looking for stories your kids will laugh with, learn from, and want to read again and again, meet Fred the Snake. Because with Fred the Snake, the real magic happens when we choose kindness and become a friend. Joining us right now from right outside of New York City, our guest is here today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of her amazing Biscuit series. There are 80 books in the series, and they have sold over 54 million copies. Please welcome to the show, Alyssa Satin Capucilli. Alyssa, congratulations. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much. A great joy to be here with you.
Boy, oh boy, that number, 54 million copies of the books in this series. It's kind of a mind-boggling number.
It kind of is. I really have just been working over the 30 years and growing lots of readers, which has been wonderful. And I don't often stop to think about the number so much, but it is really an amazing thing to have that many readers enjoying Biscuit.
Well, let's talk about who Biscuit is. Obviously, kids all around the world have fallen in love with Biscuit.
Biscuit is a small yellow puppy. It was based on something that happened in my home. My daughter was dog sitting for our neighbor's huge dog one night and wanted the dog to sleep at our home. And she tried everything she could think of to get the dog to settle down, including a snack, water, a blanket, doll. And as I watched her, it kind of brought me back to my own childhood when I was younger, where I read Henry and Ribsy by Beverly Cleary over and over again. And Henry was kind of my soulmate because he wanted a puppy as much as I did. So when I watched my daughter interacting with this large dog and watching her, I noticed she thought the dog understood every word she was saying. It was just this great confluence, this great moment of the past, the present, and that is really how Biscuit was created. I wrote the book as a lullaby, as a picture book, as a conversation, and with no idea that it would actually launch the My First I Can Read imprint from HarperCollins.
Wow. That's absolutely wonderful. As you were speaking about watching your daughter and that dog, I immediately thought of my daughter when she was 3 years old, and we would walk. She knew every dog in the neighborhood, and she would visit every dog. And there was a big yellow dog a block away from us that she would go and visit every night. And finally, when she was turning 4, my beautiful wife and I said, we got to get the kid a dog. And we went out, and it was one of those things where the dog picked us. We were looking at all the different, and there was one dog just like going, I'm going home with you guys. I'm going home with you.
Meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
There's a special connection between little girls and dogs, I think.
I think all children and dogs. I really do. And I think not only young, but I like to think old as well. Older, I should say. I think pets can bring out the best in us. And if you don't have a pet, but you connect with a character in a story, that can work easily as well, I should say, where that can almost become your surrogate pet in some way. And I think that's what does happen when children read Biscuit. They connect very much with the character, and they go along on that journey with Biscuit.
Yeah. You were telling me before we hit record that in the Biscuit series, there's 80 books in the series, and they run the gamut from board book to picture book to first reader. Was it difficult for you to kind of bounce from one genre to the other?
Not really. As I mentioned, it started as a picture book, happened to be my first model. And right after I wrote the first book, I began to get letters in the mail. And they were from students, children from all over. And they said, Biscuit is the first book I can read all by myself. So that completely inspired me to create a library for them to do that. And the other books, the picture books and the board books and other books, came a little bit later. But I always think about My First I Can Read as sort of the backbone of the series. And now I'm a bit more careful than I was with the very first story in terms of vocabulary and language and level. I don't think of it necessarily as a leveled reader. I do always approach it with a story. But I think what worked in the first one, what continues to work, is that there was pattern, there was repetition, there were those two woof woofs, which allowed children to say, I can read this almost immediately. And those woofs are also there so that the reader can use their own imagination to determine what exactly do those woofs mean. I really do leave it up to the reader. So once I had the world of Biscuit more or less established, I wanted readers to come back to a gentle world, a kind world, a world where friendship and being included is there for everyone. And those moments and those characteristics and traits really just became sort of the building blocks to do other genres of books for Biscuit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Remind everybody, please, the difference between a picture book and a first reader. I think a lot of people, especially when you have a first kid, you think, oh, picture books, that's the first book kids will learn how to read on their own, which really isn't true.
It really is not. Generally, with a picture book, it really merely means it's a book that is illustrated, but you have great reign with your language, that perhaps that is a book that you read to your child. Even when your child becomes a solid reader on their own, a solid reader independently, there still could be vocabulary, words, thoughts, ideas that are really wonderful for an older reader. Now, something like Biscuit, it's simple language. It's language that can be repetitive. There are sight words. There is repetition. And there are also illustrations that can help a child decode. So we have found that Biscuit consistently over the years has become one book that people can reach for and start the journey of independent reading, along with many other tools and supports, of course. Mm-hmm. So that's where it is a bit different.
Yeah. Now, just because a book like Biscuit for first reader is meant to be read independently doesn't mean that parents can't read it with their kids, or parents can't sit back and let the kids read it to them.
I love that you mentioned that, because it is really so important that we allow children to find their comfort level in their book that they are excited to read. And having them read to you, having them read to a pet, having them read to a stuffed animal is just a wonderful confidence builder. And once your child is reading, it really doesn't mean at all that, you should not read to them, with them. Just for the richness of language that you can expose them to, just as a model to read alongside with them, and just to discover and share characters together. Mm-hmm. So what's really interesting now at the 30th year anniversary is when I do go to book festivals and I do go to book fairs and schools, I meet generations of readers. Mm-hmm. I was at a school this morning and the teacher mentioned she had grown up with Biscuit. And the sharing of a book is much more than just words on a page. It's an experience. And I always feel that's one that we should share as much as possible.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Imagine, we talk here in the podcast about how empowering it is when we're reading a book with our kids and we stop and we say, what do you think about what's happening? And it's showing the kid that, hey, the most important person in that kid's world cares about what they think. They want to know what they're thinking. How much more empowering is it when our kids are able to read to us? I mean, that's what a great thing
I think it's huge. I mean, empowering someone to learn to read independently on their own allows them to enter, explore myriad worlds. They take the character, they take the story, the information, they let it resonate within themselves, and they go on a journey. And when they can feel that they can share that with you as the adult, it's really something that is not only empowering and brave, but the confidence building, the strength, and the enjoyment that you might show on your face when someone is sitting down to read a book to you. Those small moments of great job. Oh, that word, let me help you with it just a little bit. Mm-hmm. All of those things really build a sense of pride. And I think those are the things that really contribute to growing a lifelong reader. Mm-hmm. And that is, really what we want.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We want someone to close the book and to say, well, that was fun. I'm going to read it again to you. Mm-hmm. And, that I think is a great thing. I have another character, the library fish, and in her quest to learn to read, there's a part where she says, she reads to herself, she reads to someone who will listen, and she reads to nobody at all. But all of those things eventually make her go to sleep one night and say, I am a reader. I am a reader. So it's important. It really is.
Yeah. I'm curious, what kind of a reader were you when you were young?
I was a big reader. I went to the library every single week with my mother and my sisters. We would come home and we would play library. We didn't own a lot of books in our house, but we really, really relied on our public library. And I think everyone approaches reading differently, but I hooked into character immediately. And I remember I was even reading the poems of Robert Louis Stevenson, Bed in Summer. And it wasn't just the words on the page, but it was that I would always just envision what that character was doing, what that character was thinking. What did that character's world actually look like? And I do think that's something that I've just carried with me my whole life. I really connect with a character first. And when you can identify with a character, as I've said, you go on a wonderful journey with them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When you're starting a series and you're creating that character in your head, Jane Yolen told me she likes to start a lot of stories with what if. What if, and that there's stories walk down the street and there are 100 stories that you could write. What about you, Alyssa? Well, how do these stories start in your imagination?
Well, I always say that characters just come to me, I feel like, at very unexpected times. And while some authors like to say they're a vessel that carries that character from port to port, from cover to cover, yeah, that is true. But there is something that has to be in your own emotional life and your own experiential life that lets you expand that character into a living, breathing character in a living, breathing world. And yes, then come the what ifs and the many, many rounds of editing until you find the words that are just right. Sometimes, you really do surprise yourself because you think you're writing about one situation and then you go back and you read the story you have written and you realize you are writing about something completely different, maybe something that was really meaningful that happened to you or that happened to someone close to you, and it just ends up taking a different form. So I always find that stories surprise me. And even when I'm working in nonfiction, I may do a lot more research. I may try to really nail down every detail, even as much as I do in a book that is fiction. But there's always a component of it that I think a little bit of myself is tucked right inside. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of me tucked right inside of Biscuit.
So cool. Tell me, this might sound like a silly question, but I recently had spoke with Australian author Jeffrey McSkimming, who his middle grade novels are filled with very rich language that we don't typically hear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, is there any word that you would love to work into a story that you just haven't been able to find a way to use it?
That is a great question. A little bit of a stumper right now, but I forgive you. Yes, I think I love the magnificence of words, mm-hmm. and I would have to really think carefully if there was one word or another. I like to try to think of the word humanity, which is really such a everyday word. And we all share it. We're all part of that fabric of humanity, and we want to be kind and compassionate and all the things that make us good citizens. That is something I have worked into one of my older stories that is not for older readers, that is not quite published yet. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a hard one to work into maybe a book for a much younger reader, but I think it's a really important word. Mm-hmm. I think children need to know that at a very young age, we are all part of something bigger than each of us. Mm-hmm. We are a shared community. Mm-hmm. So I think if I could find a way to really do that without sounding preachy or that I'm giving a lesson in some way, humanity seems to surface a lot when I'm thinking of a story, and how the characters are part of that. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a bunch of cats, let's say, they might be part of something bigger than just being a family of cats, per se. So that is a word that I think I kind of keep on my desk or in my index cards from now and then to look through and say, oh yes, I have to go back to that idea.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I stumped you. That was a great answer.
You did.
Tell me, is there another character, another Biscuit kind of growing in your mind that we might see in the future?
I've just, next month we have a couple of new Biscuit books coming. We do have Biscuit Rides the Ferry, which is a whole new setting, and we do have a compilation of 5 Biscuit stories, which will be titled 5 Puppy Tales. And I think that will be great. It's sort of like a mini library for this level reader to hold and to grow with and to put their favorite bookmark in. We just began a new level for Biscuit. This was from letters from students, teachers, educators, parents. We want to grow with Biscuit. We want to go on the next step. And so we have created a Biscuit and Friends. It's sort of a mini series within series. And that is slightly more challenging, slightly longer, but still really, I think, accessible enough for every Biscuit reader to find that they can do. As far as other characters, I'm always working on something new and something different for sure.
Awesome. Any chance that Biscuit will wind up in a middle grade novel?
I think it would be a little tricky. Mm-hmm. One never knows. Biscuit, we've kind of decided that Biscuit, even though he is now 30 years old or 210 in dog years, will not age. So people find it very reassuring that he is still that small yellow puppy that they remember. But I never say never. You never know. and middle grade is definitely something I truly want to explore and write for that age group.
Yeah, fantastic. We have a lot of authors and aspiring authors that listen to the podcast, and I'm imagining they're out there thinking, "Oh man, I would love to sell 100 books. Never mind 54 million." What advice would you give to those authors?
Several things. First of all, there's a wonderful organization for authors, for illustrators, called the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, scbwi.org. You can look that up, and it is so rich and so full of how-tos and advice and career paths. The other thing you have to do is you should read broadly, because if it's been done, there's always room for more with a different twist, but you really do have to find your own voice, your own story, your own message. And when I was beginning, I did join a writer's critique group, and that might be something you find wherever you live. It can be something that you find online. Again, I will send you to the SCBWI, because they can help you join with a group of people who can listen to your work, perhaps offer some ideas, perhaps some critique. And I think the more you read, the more you can see the possibilities that are out there. Books and publishing have evolved in so many ways now. Years ago, perhaps we would not have had the graphic novel. Perhaps we would not have had the novel written in verse. These are now things that we have a beautiful, vast selection of. So I think, see what's there. Don't let that limit you, and maybe really work to find your own contribution, your own voice in this really wonderful and supportive group of people that work in children's literature.
Yeah. We should tell everybody where they can go to get in the 30th anniversary celebration of Biscuit, and learn more about Biscuit and learn more about you.
Definitely my website, www.alyssasatincapucilli.com, has lots of information on the anniversary. We are having celebrations and parties far and wide, and they're all listed on my appearances and events page. Also, for our educators and parents and anyone who is working with young children, we do have a host of activities, coloring sheets, many, many things that you are so welcome to just download and use, and as much as you would like to. And each page on my website kind of really describes each work that I do, each world that I build, and you are welcome to learn about Biscuit and other characters as well.
Awesome. Hey, what flavor cake does Biscuit prefer? Do we know?
Has to be chocolate. I'm sorry.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Biscuit, celebrating the 30th anniversary of this wonderful series. Our guest has been Alyssa Satin Capucilli. Hey, Alyssa, thanks for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much.
Hey, this episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by AspireDrinks.com. Hey, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever wanted a little extra energy, but not the kind that makes your heart race or leaves you crashing an hour later? Well, that's exactly why I want to tell you about Aspire Drinks. You'll find them at AspireDrinks.com. Aspire calls itself a healthy energy drink, and honestly, that description really fits. Instead of loading you up with sugar or extreme caffeine, Aspire delivers a gentle, steady boost with 80 milligrams of natural caffeine from green tea and guarana. That's about half the caffeine of most energy drinks. enough to help you stay focused without the jitters or the crash. It's also 0 sugar, 0 calories, and 0 artificial additives, which makes it a great choice for parents, teachers, and anyone trying to make healthier choices while still getting things done. And get this, it actually tastes great, light, crisp, and lightly sparkling, with flavors like sweet cherry, raspberry acai, mango lemonade, that's what I love. No heavy aftertaste and easy on the stomach. Aspire is packed with B and C vitamins, biotin, and ginger. And it's vegan, gluten-free, keto-friendly, really designed for real life. And just for Reading with Your Kids listeners, you can get an exclusive discount of 20% off. That's the highest discount available when you shop at aspiredrinks.com and use our promo code READ. That's READ at aspiredrinks.com. Healthy energy done right. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is sponsored by Ramble Office. You know, before I tell you about Ramble Office, let me tell you about what travel used to look like for me. When I take the Reading with Your Kids studio on the road, it was like a lot. I had one box for the mixer, another case for microphones, a satchel for my laptop, cables everywhere. And I always felt like I was forgetting something. That's why Ramble Office really clicked with me. Rambo takes everything I used to juggle, tech gear, personal stuff, and puts it into one smart, great-looking unit that's designed to be a mobile office, not just luggage. Everything has a place. Everything stays protected. And when you get to where you're going, you're ready to work. Instead of digging through bags or repacking your life every time you move, Ramble keeps your setup organized and ready to deploy. Travel days stop being chaos and start being productive. It's sleek, modern, built for people whose work doesn't stop just because they're on the move. And if your job follows you, whether that's podcasting, teaching, consulting, or creating, Ramble is worth a look. Go to rambleofficeanywhere.com, all one word, rambleofficeanywhere.com. Use the promo code READ, R-E-A-D, and receive 5% off any product. It's exclusive for Reading with Your Kids listeners. Check it out today, rambleofficeanywhere.com, promo code READ. Joining us right now from right outside of Atlanta in Georgia, our guest is here today to celebrate her middle grade novel. It's called Girl of Lore. Please welcome to the show, Melanie Dale. Melanie, how are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm a little nervous. I'm looking into your space, and I see a ghoulish kind of apparition in the background, and I know that this is the middle grade novel is about some evil spirit kind of thing. So I'm afraid you might be scaring me here with talk of Girl of Lore.
Yeah, you're seeing Colleen behind me. She's the ghost bride who haunts my office.
Ah, Colleen. Nice to see you, Colleen. Be nice to me. I interviewed an author from Ireland earlier this morning, Colleen, so we're cool, okay?
Oh, good. She's very nice, but I always try to treat her with respect just in case because she knows where I sleep.
Absolutely. Same thing I do with ChatGPT because it's going to take over someday and, you know, it knows where I live and everybody else. Tell us about Girl of Lore, please.
Yeah, I'm so excited. This is my debut middle grade novel, and it is kind of my love letter to all of my favorite gothic fiction. It is about a girl named Mina Murray, and her friend. She is in high school. She starts a lore club to investigate the lore that her town is famous for, and things start to happen, and she begins to think that maybe some of it is actually true. My idea came when my kids were in middle school. My son was in middle school, and I gave him a copy of Dracula, the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, and he gamely tried to give it a go and made it a few chapters in, but Jonathan Harker was still trapped in Dracula's castle before he gave up. And I said, I wonder if I could make this more accessible for young teens and middle grade readers, because it's my favorite story. I love it so much. So I was like, what if the characters from Dracula lived in Georgia and went to high school here?
That, we've talked to a lot of authors about how they start their process, and many of them start with what if. But I don't think we've ever had anybody say, well, what if the characters from Dracula lived in Georgia?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's already a Gothic story. And so it kind of becomes a really fun Southern Gothic story when you move it here. And it was really fun. I worked on it. It'll be 6 years when it comes out in April. So 6 years that I've worked on it. It's been really fun. And I'm so excited for other people to get to finally read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what does your son think of it? Did he get a chance to preview it?
He was one of my first beta readers, and his reaction to one of my first, probably second or third draft, his reaction was so good that it gave me the stamina to keep going, to see it realized. So, I really appreciate him, and he pulls no punches. He tells me the truth all the time. It's taken me so long to bring this to fruition that he's now about to graduate high school. So I started it when he was in middle school, but now he's about to graduate high school, but he promises me he's going to read it and love it.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the evil that your main character is going to be dealing with.
Yeah. So, she and her friends live in a town called London, Georgia. And it's a small town outside of Atlanta. And, their town is famous for vampire lore. Kind of like a fun, kitschy tourist trap type situation. So nobody really believes in the vampires, but, as she begins to investigate some of the stories in her town, she begins to have thoughts, maybe meets some true believers, and things spiral from there. So, I've always been fascinated with vampire stories. I love them. And so I'm excited to bring some vampires to Georgia.
That's awesome. I am hoping at some point I'll be able to get back into the spooky and the vampire stories. I was a huge fan, Stephen King, Anne Rice, all that. And I was in the middle of an Anne Rice novel. I've told this story before. And then my son was born. And, I held him in my arms and we took him home. And after I got my wife all comfortable and the baby went to sleep, I went to pick up the Anne Rice novel again, and I started reading, and I said, no. Don't want to go into these weird places right now that I'm a dad.
Has that continued as your kids have gotten older?
Well, they're both adults right now. I did listen. I had an epic cross country drive where I went Boston to Orlando to St. Louis to Los Angeles and back to Boston again. And I listened to a Stephen King novel on tape and was able to get through it and enjoy it. Although it was creepy at times, especially out west when there's you can't see anything for 100 miles. And oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably spooky stories are my favorite. They always have been. And especially the classics. I just reread Frankenstein again. I've read Dracula probably more than any novel. I just love it so much. But I reread Frankenstein recently, because the Guillermo del Toro movie just came out, and wanted to get back into the original book and just love it. There's something about just the original old horror classics that I absolutely love. Yeah. Yeah,
no, I love them. And, I love when I was in high school, they were talking about the real Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, and I read stories about him and all of that stuff. And there was a very famous here locally in New England author who wrote ghost stories based in New England. His name was Edward Rose Snow. And he was wonderful. And those stories were very, very fun and very creepy. Why do you think kids love spooky middle grade novels so much?
Ooh, I feel like reading spooky stories helps me process my own fears that I have in my life. And I know that was true of me when I was younger as well. The first spooky story I ever came in contact with was from a story compilation called In a Dark, Dark Room, which came out, I think, when I was in second grade, and I got my hands on it from the school library. And it was about a girl named Jenny who had a green ribbon around her neck. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it had such an epic ending in second grade, something twisted in my guts. And I loved that feeling. And I think ever since then, I have just enjoyed the paranormal, the spooky things that happen. And it has helped me process some of the real spooky things, the real difficult things in my life. So I think there's something that makes us brave as we watch characters and read about characters in fiction confront their fears that can help us in our own lives.
Yeah. And I love the fact that a spooky story, paranormal story, gets kids to think about, are there things out there that we don't know about and don't understand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's fun. I love thinking about the things we don't understand. And it's also so much fun to play with monsters. Monsters are so much fun. I love cryptids of all kinds. Here in Georgia, we have a really fun kind of a museum up in the north part of Georgia that is dedicated to Bigfoot.
Okay.
It is fascinating. Every time I drive past, I stop by, I have to get a new Bigfoot t-shirt it's just so fun. Bigfoot in Georgia, we've got, and Mothman in West Virginia. It's just so fun to discover all of the spooky monsters, Yetis, vampires, all of it. It just makes me happy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I didn't visit that museum, but one of the spookiest experiences that I ever had happened in Atlanta.
Oh.
Yeah. Most people don't know the CDC has a museum. And we were touring one year with an Italian medical student, and we did not know about this. We heard about this when we were in the hotel, and she said, "Hey, can we see and I said, "Sure." And so first it was spooky because the security, I've never been through a more intense security in my life, which is a good thing. I mean, everything in the car came out and they searched it and we got searched and IDs and all that good stuff. But in the basement of the CDC building, there's this museum where they're talking about all these different diseases and plagues that have been cured over the course of history. And that, if that's not spooky enough, you realize at some point that all those viruses and diseases are stored somewhere up above us. And so that was kind of, yeah.
Oh, viruses. That's beyond spooky. That's downright scary.
Yeah.
You mentioned Stephen King. That's like the stand,
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Ooh. I love ghost stories. And so, haunted houses, all of that. I read a lot of those kinds of books. And so it was really fun as I was working on Girl of Lore, visiting cemeteries, graveyards, a lot of really great ones around where I live around Georgia. And I also got to travel some and do ghost tours in other graveyards. So I did a really great one in New Orleans. I did one in Edinburgh and, so it's just all that spooky stuff. Everywhere I go, I try to find a graveyard.
Excellent.
You just never know what ghosts might be lurking around.
Well, you have to make a trek north to Salem, Massachusetts.
Yes.
That's where my daughter lives. Don't go in October because it's too crazy. It literally, they ask the residents to leave. They say, it's too crowded. Go. Here's free tickets to go to Boston, go to the museum, go to whatever. It really is crazy, but it's a great city. And there's all sorts of fun, spooky things to do all year round.
I've never been there.
Yeah. It's worth it. It's fun.
I'll add it to the bucket list.
Yeah. You've been writing creepy stuff for a long time. I know you've written a couple of screenplays for Creepshow. Creepshow.
I credit Greg Nicotero and Creepshow for the reason I'm writing fiction at all. so thankful for it. I have 4 nonfiction books published before this. So I've kind of wandered into fiction and all of the fun, spooky stuff. So I used to play one of the zombies on The Walking Dead. It's filmed near my house. It was when it was on. And to get out of my office, because I was a writer, and to get out of my office, meet people, hang out on set all day, I would go, and I was one of the walkers. And so through that, and I did this for probably 5 years, loved it, met so many great people. And so I met Greg Nicotero, the executive producer, when I was on that show, and he knew I was an author. We talked several times. And when he got ready to start developing Creepshow, he said, "You should pitch me a story." And I was like, "I write nonfiction." And he kind of shrugged, and I went home, I remember, and, I'm like, I don't want to miss the opportunity. Like, and I just remember sitting at my computer being like, fiction, gosh, I mean, I could write anything. I'm used to writing about my life, nonfiction. And it's like, I could write anything. And it kind of opened something in me. And so I ended up getting to write several episodes of Creepshow. It was so much fun writing anthology horror. And Creepshow is my favorite kind of horror, the funny kind. It's funny and scary, everything. I love all the emotions there. And Girl of Lore is as well. There's a lot of fun in there. There's a lot of funny dialogue, funny characters, as well as the spooky, scary stuff. So I love that combination, and Creepshow had that. And so I really got to develop learning how to write fiction, with Greg Nicotero as someone who is teaching me. I mean, it was just such an incredible opportunity. So I give him so much credit. And so after that, or as I'm working on Creepshow, I got the idea for Girl of Lore and this world of bringing Dracula to a high school in Georgia. And yeah, I came from there.
There you go. I love it. And it's a great lesson for any author out there, any performer. If you have an opportunity and somebody says, "Hey, can you do?" The answer is yes, absolutely.
What's the worst that could happen? You fail.
Right.
The worst that, but even if I never got to write for Creepshow, just the very act of trying to see if I could, I learned so much about writing fiction, and I've been doing it ever since. I loved it. Yeah.
Tell me, one of the things that people, always authors say a lot is that at some point their main character or a character in a story surprised them. And your book is all about surprises and scares. Is there any moment in the writing that your main character surprised you?
A couple things come to mind when you ask that. She surprised me with her emotional depth, and what was going on in her heart and in her head. My main character, Mina, struggles with OCD. I struggle with OCD as well. And I really noticed that I struggled with that when I was, in middle school and, like upper elementary, middle school. So right around the people who will be reading my book, that was when I really started developing. I didn't know what it was. I mean, hello, it was the 80s and 90s. Like I have no idea. I was more recently diagnosed that's what it was. And I was like, oh, so Mina struggles with OCD and working with her as a character and figuring out how to have her struggle with those intrusive thoughts and the doubts that she struggles with. Figuring out how to portray that on a page was a challenge for me. And she surprised me with, the depth of her struggle. I feel like I learned a lot about my own struggle with OCD through translating that through Mina. So, so that was one thing. And then the other thing is, I gave myself a jump scare in my own book. So you talk about surprise. Like I literally surprised myself. I got so on one of the more recent passes and edits, I got so into what was happening that I forgot that something spooky was about to happen. And when I hit it, I like jumped and gasped in my seat. And then I was like, yes, okay, if I can scare myself and I wrote it, that feels good.
Yeah. We love encouraging families to continue to read with their kids when they become independent readers, when they're in middle school, when they're in high school. And I think Girl of Lore would be a fun book to kind of curl up on the couch with, shut off all the lights except the one that help you read, and read the story together, or co-read. and then come together and talk about on the way to school or at dinner. What kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're reading Girl of Lore?
Ooh, I love that. I think for definitely mental health is one of the things that, Mina's struggling with her mental health. There's a therapist is one of the characters in the book. And so I think mental health, there's a lot of great conversations about regulating breathing and processing big things that are going on in a healthy way. So I think that is one thing you can really talk about. Also, working, like being in school and developing friendships. There is a really special relationship in the book, and some of the things that they go through can be challenging. And I think Mina learns a lot from a friendship in the book. And so it can be a really great opportunity to talk about friendships and really like fighting for an important friend, and how to learn from that friend. So that's another thing I would say. And processing fears. There's also, there's so much. I love this question. There's also, a lot of family stuff, mother-daughter stuff that would be really special, to be able to talk about. I have 2 daughters. I have a son and 2 daughters. And so I think as a mom, it would be really fun to talk about some of the things that Mina and her mom go through in the book.
Yeah. And those conversations are about heavy topics. They're so much easier to do when you're in the car talking about characters in a book instead of sitting down in the living room saying, son, daughter, we need to have a very important talk here today. It's,
I used to read to my kids at the dinner table. And that was a great time. And we read all different things. And, Wonder was one of the middle grade books I read at the dinner table. You have a captive audience. They're tired. Sometimes when they don't want to come up with what to talk about, it's a great opportunity for me to pull out a book and read a little bit, maybe a chapter or 2 of a book, and then have a little discussion about it. It's kind of like a family book club. Yeah. Just around the dinner table while people are eating. Yeah. I loved doing that when my kids were younger.
So much better than turning on a device.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And easier than, sometimes as parents, we can run out of questions, how was your day? So sometimes pulling out a book is fun because it just mixes it up, and they're not put on the spot about talking about their own lives, but then you can end up having these incredible conversations by having a discussion about some characters in a book, and it can lead back to their lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know anybody at school that's going through the same thing? Oh, yeah, this girl, yeah, fantastic.
Book. There are some difficult things that happen. They're teenagers, and make for really good conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, your mic's starting to break up, but I think we're at the point now where I'm going to ask you to tell us where we can go to find out more about Girl of Lore and find out more about you.
Yes, I have a website, melaniedale.com. You can go there. Girl of Lore comes out April 21st.
Excellent. And now that your first fiction book is out there, are we going to write some more?
Yes, I am currently playing in the world of London, Georgia, and helping Mina and her friends with some developments that may have occurred in the first book.
So we're talking series. All right.
We'll see. Hopefully lots of more stories from London, Georgia.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Girl of Lore. Our guest has been Melanie Dale. Hey, Melanie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Leave a 5-star review, and of course, subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. Starting with our guest, Alyssa Satin Capucilli. Please be sure to check out Biscuit, the 30th anniversary of Biscuit. Both of my kids remember reading Biscuit in school. They loved it. It's a great series. 80 books in total in the series and 54 million copies sold. Amazing. Also want to thank Melanie Dale. Please be sure to check out Girl of Lore. I want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Jackson Saltalera. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support and love and faith she brings me. And of course, every one of us wants to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very, very much for taking the time to make the world a better, more empathetic, and kinder place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.